From Central Indiana's #1 news source, this is Fox 59 Tonight.
And good evening to you. Thank you for joining us here on Fox 59 Tonight. I'm Cameron Littlewood Cashville today. Thank you for downloading the Fox 59 Smart TV app on your Roku, Fire TV, or Apple TV. And if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss any of the conversations that we're having here every night at 8 o'clock on Fox 59 Tonight. It is a holiday weekend. Some people are off today. Some people were off yesterday. It's a federal holiday. So a lot of federal offices were closed. All the federal offices were closed, but the state offices were still open because I went to the BMV yesterday. They were still working. But nevertheless, there is a celebration called Juneteenth, and it's something that some of us have heard all of our life. Other people have only heard of Juneteenth in the last couple of years. And only in the last couple of years has it actually become a federally recognized holiday. So that's not a surprise. But what is Juneteenth actually about? Now, if I had to sum it up the way it was explained to me, and this is something that I heard when I was younger, when we lived in Northwest Indiana, I remember going into Chicago to the Juneteenth celebrations. I remember that. I don't ever remember anything really happening in Indiana or in Indianapolis until in the last couple of years. And we told you about all the celebrations that are happening this weekend. But in the shortest way that it was explained to me was that this was when the information trickled in to the slaves that they were actually free. It took several days, and it was around, took the span of the days that start with 10th and 19th and all that, and that's how the news traveled. But I keep hearing different variations of the story, some deeper, some with more information. And so I want to get everybody the full backstory on Juneteenth. And what do you do? Who do you call? You call an information specialist who knows these things because it's in books and it's been written about. So we bring in an education information expert in Nichelle M. who's in our studio to tell us about Juneteenth. What is it? How we got here? Happy Juneteenth, because I guess neither one of us would be sitting here if we didn't have this.
Thank you. Happy Juneteenth, Cameron. I'm excited to be here and excited to talk about this.
So pull that mic a little bit closer.
Okay.
Let's see. Pull that in. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. There you go.
Okay, excellent.
So Juneteenth. What is the explanation of this now federal holiday?
So Juneteenth celebrates when the last group of formerly enslaved Africans here on the land in the land of America were actually told that you are free. They were given that information in Galveston, Texas, and that came from Commander Granger. And Commander Granger actually read General Order Number 3. And so he read this to the people of Texas, and it said, the people of Texas are informed that in accordance with a proclamation from the executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves, and the connection heretofore existing between them becomes that between employer and hired laborer. And so the celebrations began after that announcement was made. So it's very hard for us in 2025 to conceptualize of something taking a long time to travel as far as information. You had newspapers, you have wire, but it did not go as fast as it does when we just turn on our phones and turn on the TV and turn on the radio. It was a much slower process. And honestly, people wanted that process to be a little bit slower because they wanted that free labor for a little bit longer. But General Granger came, he gave that announcement, and the people knew, finally, thank God Almighty, we're free at last. And so that is what June 19th is. And so that's when it first started. And then the next celebration was that next year.
So it all happened on June 19th, or was it a combination of days in the teens where that information trickled out?
More than likely, I would imagine he made that announcement on the 19th, and then the information spread, like we said. So you went to the next town, somebody else went to the next town, it spread. Did you hear? Did you know? In the pulpit, in the barbershop, at the general store, and it just spread and spread and spread.
So from there, and actually, I think it's interesting when we talk about how the information flows because Galveston, especially at the time, and even still now, is about as far south as you can be, and
And it's
so it
still
makes
being
sense if the
America.
decisions coming from the north that the last place to find out would be in the furthest southern part of the United States.
Exactly. And Texas was the last state to actually recognize that.
So this has now become a celebration only in the past couple years. I'm jumping way ahead, but why is this now recently become something that is one a federal holiday and that more people are just now finding out about?
So I think, as you mentioned, you were in Northwest Indiana, so you
Mhm.
would go to Chicago and you would hear about that.
Mhm.
I'm born and raised in Indianapolis. I talk about that a lot. I'm a third generation Hoosier. So growing up, Juneteenth was not something that was in our vocabulary.
Mhm.
Maybe there were some pockets of people, maybe if they had a more close connection to Texas, maybe they were doing that, but just citywide, that just didn't happen.
Mhm.
So as people moved about and migrated to different cities, that information about Juneteenth spread. And so I would say for me, I probably started really hearing about it and celebrating it myself probably about 6, maybe 7 years ago.
Mhm.
And so, in a former job I had, we would have huge celebrations, we would have reenactments. It was amazing. And so I learned about it right along with everybody else. And so I don't think people should fear learning. I don't
Mhm.
think they should fear new information because that's actually a good thing. It means we're growing and we're taking in information and understanding it in a different way. And so I think that that spread across the country. And then also, the grandmother of Juneteenth is Opal Lee. And so I think, if I'm not wrong, she's in her 90s,
Mhm.
maybe a little bit older than that. But she fought, she walked, she talked. She really spread the word about Juneteenth and wanting it to be a national holiday. So Texas has celebrated this officially since the 1980s, and everybody else was a little bit later to the party. And so Opal Lee, through her activation and other people, really got it on the eye of then President Biden. And so he signed that into law in 2021. And I think it's really important because we made up this country. The reason the United States is the powerhouse that it is because of our free labor. So this country was built on our backs, blood, sweat, and
Mhm.
tears.
So as you said, it was President Joe Biden who, um, in his term as president, made it a federal holiday, which means a lot of people get off work. I know here at this company, it's a company holiday. But of course, the current president actually said yesterday that he thinks there's far too many um, holidays where people don't have to work.
The current president says a lot of things, and I actually don't see a lot of work from them. So that's an interesting statement.
And it's interesting of all holidays to make that statement.
Yes.
We have President's Day and all these other
Labor
things.
Day, Memorial Day,
Yeah.
Arbor Day, you name it, we've got them.
So that's why it's important to explain to people why this day is important because it's just as monumental as any other thing. I mean, probably more like it's a marking of a day where something actually happened, where the country actually changed. Whereas you could argue President's Day is just a day. Why is it February 20th? It could have been any day. It's a difference in holiday.
It doesn't have a historical significance as
Thank
far
you.
as President's Day, but this, we can attach it to something tangible.
Correct. Correct. So so I'm learning a lot. So 1980s was really even those who say, "Oh, y'all just now catching up to June 18th, Juneteenth, you just now finding out about it." Well, everybody else has really only been celebrating it since the 80s, which is still not that long ago.
No, pretty recent.
Pretty recent. So between the original June 19th of what year?
It was 1865.
So between 1865 and the 1980s, what was going on?
A lot of celebrations in different ways. And so there were church celebrations, there were readings, there were reenactments. And especially, again, if we look at it, based in Texas. So in Galveston, that was the heart, that was the hub, that's where it all started. And it kind of expanded out from that point. And so there's a lot of things that are red. So you might have red velvet cake, you might have
Hmm.
red pop, you might have, maybe strawberries, things like that. So it was the celebration, it was the enthusiasm, the excitement that finally, after hundreds of years, we actually were free.
So where does the red come from?
So I think the red is celebration. And then, of course, whenever we're getting together, people love to have food. And
Hmm.
so why not tie that red food together?
Hmm.
And like with a lot of things, because people weren't documenting things, they were just living their lives,
Hmm.
they just spread. And so each person you talk to might have a different idea about where the red comes from. And
Hmm.
for me, I would say it's festive, and red is my color. So
And all of it, of course, good food. So nothing,
absolutely.
nothing to complain about there. So um, I don't know that there um, are a lot of movies or anything about Juneteenth, but I know that there are books.
Absolutely. There are a great many books that you can delve into. A really great book is On Juneteenth by Annette Gordon Reed. And so she is a history professor. And this is part memoir, part historical novel. And she's from the Galveston area. So she talks about what it's like being a child and working on Juneteenth and celebrating with her family and what that really means. So this is a really good book to bring out. And another good book to bring out, because I think something that we don't talk a lot about is the lives of enslaved people. What
Hmm.
was that like? How did they live? Freedom Over Me by Ashley Bryan is a really good book. And so it talks about the 11 lives of enslaved people and how
Hmm.
they lived. And so I've heard people say, oh, slavery was beneficial. People were kind to enslaved people. And we know that that is not true.
Hmm.
They suffered the lash, they suffered separation from their families. They did not have freedom. They did not have agency. They did not have control. Everything they did was controlled by their owners. And so um, it's a complicated history that we have, especially when you are a descendant of
Hmm.
slaves.
Hmm. So we'll go back through all these books because I want to know a little bit more about them. But what other ones do you have there? I know you got a stack.
I do. So, also, 400 Souls is a really good book. This is a combination of essays, and it's edited by Dr. Ibram Kendi and by Dr. Keisha Blaine. And so it goes over hundreds of years, and it takes it in different bites. Nicole Hannah Jones also has an excerpt in this book. So, if you want to really do a deep dive, this is something good that gives you history as far as America. And then another book, and I know a lot of people have seen this movie, but I always would promote a book over a movie, is Cast by Isabel Wilkerson, The Origins of Our Discontent. So it talks about America, how we got here,
Hmm.
and kind of all the intricacies of America. And I don't think we do a good job of teaching history
Hmm.
here in America. And I think sometimes that's on purpose. A book that I didn't bring, but I will mention is The Lies My History Teacher Told Me
Mm.
by James Lowen. And so there's an actual book and then also a graphic novel by Nate Powell. And Nate Powell lives in Bloomington, by the way, and he did the graphics for March with John Lewis.
Okay.
So he's amazing and he does really great work. And when you read that book, I just at some point I just had to stop saying, "Oh my goodness, I didn't know. Oh my goodness, I didn't know." Because
Hmm.
every page,
Hmm.
that's what it was. There's just a lot that's left out.
So what I would be curious to know, and I don't know if any of these books talk about it, but the news is brought to Galveston and to all these other places. What was it like in that moment? Was it like, so we can go, or so you have to pay us to do this? Or and what kind of pushback was it that no, 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 hold on, just because you said this doesn't mean it's actually true? Like, what, I want to know what that moment was like.
Right. So Granger did not come alone. He came with military might. And so there was power behind those words. It
Mm.
wasn't just a piece of paper, there was power. So the people in the area understood that this is real. This is happening right now. We don't have another day to figure this out. But as far as how did it happen, I think it was different for each person, each family, each plantation. Some people, I'm sure, picked up, left, and never turned back.
Mhm.
Other people tried to figure out, what do I do? How am I going to move forward? Where am I going to go? Do I stay here and kind of renegotiate my contract, so to speak, or do
Mhm.
I just set off to parts unknown and figure out a new way for myself?
Mhm.
Some people were thinking, if I leave, will I ever be reunited with family members that have left? So should I stay close to this area, or should I leave and then put things out in the paper to try to reunite with them? So there were a lot of questions, a lot of different ways of responding. And I don't think there was one way that people responded to it other than with joy and the
Mhm.
jubilation. And I think that's why it took then a year to really have that celebration, which was in 1866.
And so a lot of what I've also heard is that it took a year for everybody to get the news from June 19th on. Is that true?
I wouldn't say that it took a year, but probably several months. And then we wanted to do some planning to really think about how we were going to celebrate it. What would
Mhm.
that look like? And for every community, that would look different. And again, Galveston was the epicenter. So you wouldn't have that same kind of celebration in Kansas or Georgia or Mississippi.
Mhm. So now that it is moved uh from this just being a Texas celebration, I guess I'm wondering now, and I don't know if you know this, what was the gap? How far behind was Galveston and the people of Texas in getting the news from everybody else?
So the Emancipation Proclamation was signed by President Lincoln. But we know that it only was for a certain segment of the population. It wasn't really everyone. And so part of it was political theater, a little bit of it, but it was also, executive order. And we have become very familiar with executive orders with the
Mhm.
current occupant of
Mhm.
the White House.
Mhm.
And so they're being signed every day. And so it does take a little while to get those out, to learn what the impact is going to be. And with what we're experiencing, they're signed, they're retracted, they're signed, they're retracted. So it's not instantaneous.
Mhm.
And so it was a battle. It was a civil war. So we lost more people in the Civil War than we have in any other war, and actually all the other wars combined. So you had brothers against brothers, cousins against cousins. And so the country was in turmoil.
As this is now moved to a national celebration, and people all across the country are just not hearing about it. What was it like? You're from here in Indianapolis. Like I said, I knew about it from being in Northwest Indiana, but and I've heard that maybe the Children's Museum had some things over the years, but never really anything here in Indiana. You say?
So Indiana is, we're the Midwest, and
Mm-hmm.
some people call us the Up South.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Indiana in the 1920s was the hotbed for the KKK. The KKK, they were in the state house, they
Mm-hmm.
were in the mayor's office here in Indianapolis, they were all over the state. So I'll just let you draw your own conclusions from that
Mm-hmm.
on what we have going here. A lot of sundown towns.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but we also, on the converse side of that, had a lot of Black settlements. I know a lot of people have heard of Lyles as well as others. And so we did have pockets of, let's say, Black resilience within our state, but you also didn't want to be really loud about that because you wanted to live your life in peace.
Mm-hmm.
And so you didn't want to cause a lot of attention to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you had both of those things. And I think for us to really spread information and get people to know it, it has to be sustained.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to say it again and again over time. I took Communications 101, and what I learned is that communication is bound to fail. And so they tell us that you have to hear something 3 times before you act on it.
Mm-hmm.
So just telling somebody one time is not necessarily going to make it stick in their head. And so that's why I think it's important when we celebrate Juneteenth that we actually talk about it. General Order 3, it was Granger, it was in Galveston, how it started, how it started in Texas, to really give the details until it really becomes a part of us. And I always like to go with facts. So the Emancipation Proclamation was signed January 1, 1863. Now, that is something that traditionally a lot of Black Americans have celebrated.
Mm-hmm.
Emancipation. Again, it did not free everyone,
Mm-hmm.
but it did get the ball rolling.
And what do you mean when you say it didn't free everyone, only certain people?
Because the executive order said it was only for certain people covered under this particular part of the executive order, and it gave the regions and everything. So it wasn't a blanket, you're all free. It was only for certain areas. And I'd have to look at that to read it to you exactly.
So we're going to talk some more about Juneteenth and how we got here. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and then we'll be back with more Fox 59 tonight as we celebrate and educate about Juneteenth. We'll be right back.